Hi, everyone. So one of the rapid fire questions that I was asked was, like, what is your karaoke song? And I was like, well, I pretty much like my spouse and I think that was the like game winning moment when I was doing karaoke to waterfalls. So, but then I was like, oh, this is like, what playlist is this? Then I found out it was based off of my two karaoke songs. So I was like, cool, it's like the geriatric millennial playlist this morning. Thank you. Also, I'm a geriatric millennial. Like, what is that? Okay, so. Oh, clicker. Okay, wait. Let's test this out. Okay. I'm gonna just like go through some background stuff because I'm ADHD and I'm like, how much things can I bring? Yeah, woo, who's that? Yeah, woo. ADHDers getting everything and nothing done all at one time. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about my journey as a trans person, but I also am gonna do it through flower arranging because that's the environment I grew up in. So I wanna share a little bit about my life, and this is I think conversations at the flower shop with my mom and my aunt, who are owners. If you knew Wendy's Flowers in Chula Vista, that's where I grew up. Yeah. So it's been around forever. My aunt probably made your boutonniere and corsage. And then I probably did that for if you have kids or nieces or nephews. This is a very intergenerational space, but basically it's where we would like sit around and just, shop talk there. And I think for today, I just want to share some stories with everyone, and I don't know that it's necessarily a drawn out, like very, I don't know, you're going to walk away with your mind blown, but you will learn a little bit more about me and just some of the things that I think about as a trans person, what I've had to navigate as a trans person. And yeah, so I have my one flower now, but we'll see what's created in this moment. And I also want this to be casual, right? So, like, hopefully it's not going to be too stuffy. Do I have my knife? I do have my knife. Thank God, because that would have really just thrown a wrench in this whole thing. What out of here? Real creative. So flower arranging for me. Oh, time also. Did my time already start? Can I start now? Yeah. I'm also a talker, and I'll just like talk about everything and anything as well. Okay, and microphones right here. Got it. I'm all set up. So flower arranging, and what I learned about being a creative and flower arranging is from my mom and my aunt, right? Like there's moments where I was like, wow, okay, they've got to make this arrangement, and this container broke. How are they going to do that? And watching my mom and my aunt go, building something out of nothing that's completely unconventional, but it worked. And I was like, all right. And then I saw this like type of creativity at home, when times were tough and we didn't have like the financial stability to necessarily have all the groceries in the world. And it's kind of like, how are we gonna economically survive? But they fed our family for 2 weeks on 2 grains of rice. I don't know how they did that, but it was divine. And that's like that's like what Asian people do. They just make it work. So I'm really thankful for those moments of getting to not just witness, but to learn. Like I learned at the flower shop, it was like watching my mom and my aunt raise me, also be like pillars in the community of just like knowing intergenerational people, like relying on community and building that. So I grew up in this really cool environment, but then also I think the other part was like, I had to scrub buckets, and that sucked. And I had to, then I was a delivery driver, and I was a flower designer, and I was a customer service person, at the age of 8. And then so I'm like, all right, so I've got skills going into this world. But what I think I appreciated the most was it was never when you get older and you're, I wasn't bound to flower making. It wasn't like you have to do this in this way. It was like, they taught me the skills to make flowers and then to the ability to think about how I want to be creative and how I want to, design something or use colors or try flowers that I've never used before, and like, oh, they don't last in no water, or they last in water, but it has to be, an inch and not the full stem, and just like all the intricacies. And I think, again, back to a time where within my family, gender it wasn't like, oh, you're a girl, you're a boy, and this is how you have to act, or this is what you have to wear. I actually had a lot of freedom as a kid to explore gender and to explore what that meant for me. But as we moved out into a very conservative area in El Cajon, that kind of got stifled, and I realized that, I was already experiencing a ton of racism as an Asian kid out in East County, but then to even question gender and the idea of being desirable, or the idea of fitting in, and while I already stood out, right, I started to go into survival mode. And as I think about just even what survival means, and in order to survive, you have to be creative. Like, we're put in situations where if you aren't creative, you will die, right? And I think of the LGBTQ community, and what that's meant for us to, like, we've been existing throughout time. People are like, I do trainings, right? So real quick, so Transform Together, I do consulting on LGBTQ training, and a lot of the conversations I get, and especially for youth, I educate educators, I educate businesses and corporations, and in my trainings, I always get these questions like, this like new trendy trans thing, and I'm like, first of all, being trans and trendy is the most like strange thing to hear when it like, takes you 6 months to get a doctor's appointment, and I don't know, like if you don't have insurance, you gotta pay out of pocket, or to like even get surgery or talk surgery. Like, there's so many barriers. So when I hear people say like, oh, it's so trendy to be trans, and I'm like, wow, you must not be trans to say that. I've never heard a trans person be like, oh my God, look at us, we made it, we're so trendy. Never heard that. And so it's like interesting for me to like just navigate this world in a space where I think we have to carve out our existence creatively. We have to rely on things that have been passed down to us and the way our ancestors have survived. And I didn't know that as a kid. And I remember, okay, time, okay. I remember as a kid, and this will date me, but the first, and I know there's a lot of marketing and graphic people in the room, and I think that's awesome. But I remember I was 12 years old, and I had a teen magazine, and I opened it up, and there was a Calvin Klein marketing thing for a perfume. And I remember looking at that and going, oh my God, who is this person? And like, what is this whole concept? And it was the first time I saw something that was like, it wasn't gender binary. It wasn't like male or female, like heavily feminine or heavily masculine. And I couldn't tell the gender of the people. And do you know what I'm talking? Do you know who can shout? CK1, what's up? Okay, y'all have aged yourselves too. So I'm in company of my peers' age group. All right. It was CK1, and the whole concept of it was brilliant, was that anyone can wear this perfume. I don't know that they were like trans rights, non-binaries. I think they were like sales. Like let's like market this perfume so that anybody can wear it. And like really, we can do that with anything, right? Like there are like colognes for men and perfumes for women. Like you can like splash anything you want on. Just make sure it's not too strong and doesn't rub off on other people when you hug them. And so CK1 was brilliant. Because as I'm like looking at this perfume, I'm like, wow, anybody can wear that. And boy, talk about creative. I made that sample last all year long. I was like, savoring it, putting it back, like, because I couldn't afford to get the perfume. I was gonna ask my mom to buy it for me. So I was like, and if there was another magazine, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna like rip that out and take it home. So I was definitely a CK1 wearer for free, Calvin Klein. But I think I felt like that was, for me, a moment of resistance. That was a moment of, I'm gonna be a gender transgressor. I can't live my life in the world the way they're allowing me to, especially at school. That's where I was really, I think, controlled the most. My concept of gender, my concept of sexuality or sexual orientation, that's where I was the most stifled, in a classroom, in an educational setting where we're supposed to learn and be able to explore. And exploring is, like, you can't explore if you're not creative. You can't be creative, you're not exploring. Like, we're all explorers. Anytime we're looking at something and we're saying, this is what I'm told, this is what I'm like being told I have to do, and you're saying, that's not it. Like, that's not it for me, and I'm gonna like build my life around this, or through it, or just completely out of it and find something different. Like, that's creative, right? Like, that is imagination, that is exploring, that is taking risk. And so as I was like, okay, I'm definitely getting bullied for being Asian, can't really downplay that. So it was like, how can I hide? How can I start to make myself less of a target of bullying, of harassment, of being picked on, even by my teachers, right? Like, it's not even just my peers, it's also by my teachers. I thought Asians were quiet, and I'm like, I don't know where that came from. I've never had anyone tell me that. Like, you know, you gotta be quiet, or you gotta act like a girl. And so to learn these things in the public setting from my neighbors, from external family members, it was really hard to deal with. And my mom saw my struggle, and she was also like, I don't know how to necessarily support you, except to love you, and that was life-saving. And the same for my aunt. And I think about, oh, where's my time? Oh, I can like make this in like 5 minutes, but since we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, and then this one story. And so I'm thinking about too, when in those moments when I'm like looking at this magazine and this like marketing of CK1 that's like Jenny Shimizu, the first Asian supermodel who's just so hot, and I'm like, I have feelings. Like, I'm feeling something about this image, this androgyny. That's like what they were really selling, you know. And of course, there's like discourse around like how fatphobic and shaming and not inclusive even those things can be. So I also love the idea that we're constantly critiquing, right? Like, critical thought on everything. It doesn't mean it's negative. It means that we're looking to do better. We're looking to make better. We're looking to create better. And then who is included and who is not. And I think that is something that when I think about the CK1 thing, I'm like, yeah, they definitely weren't like trans rights, you know, everyone in the streets. But they also were at some level saying what hasn't been done and how can we interrupt or disrupt that very flowing like way of like men and women and feminine and masculine, and that everything is gendered. Like, I saw like bug spray that was like, bug spray for women, and I'm like, I didn't realize mosquitoes had gender preferences, but someone, I guess, is doing a study on that, or again, they're just trying to like market to certain people, like, oh, this is a pink bug spray bottle instead of a blue one. It's just so bizarre to me. Do not buy those things, folks, like, or challenge them at the most. Like, we need some gender-neutral mosquito spray. All are included in this battle against mosquito bites. And so, where am I going with this? And so, yeah, so I think the part for me in thinking about how our existence has transgressed genocide, right? Like, not to get deep, dark, and scary, but I think of like the indigenous peoples of this land, and that they, you know, before colonization are the folks that were you know, the healers and the leaders of their communities. And that's in Japanese culture, that's in Indian culture, that's like throughout the world that we see. We have always existed. So back to the trending thing. So the new trans, non-binary, it's not a trend. It's just that we have access. We have more visibility. We have computers on our phones. That we have access to this information that we didn't so easily before. Plus, there's more awareness, right? Like, people are saying, we know representation matters. Oh my God, this arrangement, I'm not even paying attention to this. That representation matters, and how do we make that inclusive? How do we fight for that? And part of the work that I do as someone who works with LGBTQ plus youth, even my own transformation as a trans person, as an advocate, that changed. We've had moments where we've seen extreme loss. We're continuing to see that, where you know, youth are feeling these like moments of despair that they can't live or they can't exist because we don't have representation. We have the largest amount of anti-LGBTQ legislation has gone through in this past cycle, right? Like 500 plus bills trying to, especially targeted at trans youth, trying to eliminate us from society. And that is something, when I think about, I'm like, God, how do we get up in the morning and say, I've got hope that things are going to be different? And that's where I think relying on the ancestors, relying on the people before us, knowing that, times get tough and we're able to find our way through. We're able to find each other as well. So when I go into a space and I'm working with the youth and they're like, I feel alone, I feel, and then to be able to connect them to another person, or for them to see me and say, wow, trans people live to be adults, that I now see myself and my ability to live in the future, that changes perspective. So our existence, that phrase, our existence is resistance, our existence, just in and of itself, no matter what your struggle has been, is like the fabric of that is being creative. Creative in your art, creative in your intention of why you're getting up every day, creative in saying, I cannot be myself in this place, but I'm gonna wear this perfume and I'm gonna like push back and know internally and keep myself going until the moment I can be out, I can share these things with people, and like that we can't do this alone, right? Like I think the other thing is we try to think like, oh, that's an LGBTQ issue, that's a Black issue, that's a economic issue, that's an immigration issue, and that's not really my issue. But we're all interconnected. Everything that we do. When I hear the terms, and I hear this a lot in some spaces, like I'm a self-made man, and I'm like, what? You like self-made? You like made your clothes? You like, what does that mean? You built your own car, like to get you to work? I don't understand those kind of words and phrases, because I don't believe at the core of who we are that any of us are self-made. I think we are community-made, and I think sometimes there's good and sometimes there's bad, and it's what we then decide to take from what we've been given and be creative. How we're going to fix that? How we're going to honor it? How we're going to cultivate it? How we're going to transform it? And to do that, we have to do that with ourselves, right? Like we have to transform ourselves. We have to look at inside and say, what are the things holding me back, and what is my power? As we're going into this next school year, I'm going to different school. Oh, I'm getting tight here. I'm going to like different school board meetings, and to hear adults in front of kids tell them that their existence and is fake, and that their identity is fake, and that they're being groomed and all these things, when like, hold on, ADHD, where's my clicker? Sorry, I have like so many quotes. And that when we tell youth that there's no existence, or they don't belong, or they're not these things, and what we're doing is we're limiting education, we're limiting the possibilities. I believe that I had moments of creativity saved me throughout my childhood and my adulthood. But I was limited. I had to like crawl. I had to continue finding small moments to transgress what has been given to me. And I think when I do this work, I'm looking at youth who I'm like, I don't want you to go through that. I want you to have the space to explore. I want you to have the space without limits, without someone telling you, you can't do that because you are. You can't do that because that's not how we do things. Like, I think that's as soon as I hear that phrase, and I hear it in business, I hear it in workspaces where it's like, that's just not how it's done. And it's like, okay, so cool, let's just not do anything new or creative. It's been done that way forever. And I think it's because it's fear. So when we have those moments of I feel uncomfortable, you're talking to me about non-binary and gender things, and I just like the perfume, right? Why do I gotta talk about gender with all this? And you feel uncomfortable about it. It's sitting with that discomfort, sitting with that, what is it about this conversation? Or it's Pride again. We had Pride in June, and then in San Diego we had Pride in July, and it's Pride in August, so much Pride. And it's yeah, but we're fighting 500 plus bills to exist, right? I have to still tell people I have to do trainings. I have to talk about representation. So while there may be some marketing things around LGBTQ identity, we're far from understanding or accepting that This is a person's identity. That's who they are. They have just as much right to be here. Whether someone agrees or disagrees with my identity, that's not my problem, right? Like I used to just get so depressed and so sad because I would get the violence against trans people, me and my body. I'm like, God, just me walking down the street offended this person so much. I don't even know them, that they're going to chase me down the street. Like that's happened, right? And I'm like, what? How did I deserve that? I'm just literally walking down the street, and this person felt so offended by my existence, and I was like, that's not a me problem. It's not me. I'm showing up in my truth, and that must be terrifying for people who can't or who don't know how, because they've never been given the environment to explore that, or the permission, or the encouragement, or affirmations to think differently, to be differently. And I look at trans youth, and I'm like, these are young people. And I think a lot of times adults dismiss the brilliance of young people because they're like, oh, they don't, I've already been there. They have all this stuff to go through, puberty, yuck. But the fact that a kid can say, you've presented me with these two identities, male, female, masculine, feminine, and I'm rejecting that. I'm saying, that doesn't really fit me, and I'm somewhere beyond. I'm somewhere within. I'm somewhere with all of that, and I'm not going to be I'm not going to conform to what you're trying to mold me into. I've got other plans for myself. That's these kids are creative. They get it, and I think when we fail to challenge what's been presented, or to think critically about our education, or to look back and say, I deserved more in my education. And if you identify as, if you were assigned female at birth or male at birth, and you still identify as a female or male, at what point in your life did you claim that? At what point in your life did you say, yeah, that's who I am, I'm thinking about what was presented to me, and I vibe with it. That's great, But if you've just been going through it because society has told you that's who you are and that's who you have to be, then I think that's where something's been taken from you. And at some point, I talked to my aunt, and it's like, well, how did you know that you're a woman? Because I don't understand that. I internally cannot tell you what it means to be a man or a woman. I know how to perform femininity, I know how to perform masculinity, and I think up until finding myself and finding my identity, finding my history, that I was in drag. I was performing. I was like, all right, you want femininity? Here you go. With my SpongeBob SquarePants body structure, trying to really rock some stuff, and having to unpack all those other societal expectations of beauty and standards, whatever. But besides from that, I think of just how empowering it is for all of us in the room, however you were assigned, whatever's been expected of you, to what does it mean to take a moment and say, this is what makes me me, and I'm choosing this. Not because society told me I have to be feminine. I am this because I love being feminine, and I love being a woman. I love being a man, and that being a man doesn't mean violence, and being a man doesn't mean entitlement. That being a man means I'm a creator, and I'm creative, and I am respectful, and I honor the people around me. And it's how do we redefine these systems that haven't served you? And to push back and say, I'm rejecting this model. I'm rejecting this information you've given me because it doesn't fit. We're all doing that. You're no different than the trans and non-binary people finding themselves in this society and in these structures. And I'm like, how empowering is it for us to be able to walk away from something and say, I know who I am, or I feel safe navigating that I may not be what society's told me to be. And so I think of our responsibility to ourselves in being creative, our responsibility to ourselves in leaning into our identity, and I also think it's our responsibility to make that space for others, to build that space for our future, not just for if you're going to have kids or not. I think it's the way of society. It's the way that elders said, I'm gonna risk my life because this is the bridge I will die on, or this is the hill I will die on. and honoring myself. And what does that mean for you to do that? What does that mean for you to add that into your purpose and in your work, into your art, into your daily life and the people that you're connected to, your family? How are you going to be that person that says, you're going against the grain, and you know what? That's your journey. And without like judgment or without shame of that person. And so I think of also the interconnectedness of everyone in this room. We're here together sharing space, sharing air, sharing like a desire to be part of something, which I think is innately human. And whether it's like, okay, I like 5 people and that's like my boundary, or like, I love everybody. It's like figuring out how in our connectedness we show up for each other too. And maybe it's not, going to a protest and laying down in the street. Maybe it is. Maybe it's, listening to music or supporting a business or, letting someone know, hey, I went to Pride. I know I'm not LGBTQ, but I want to support folks and I want to respect and honor them and where they're at in their lives. And I'm thinking about like when I first started this arrangement, right? Like it was one flower in my little vase, not to get all like dramatic. But here we're building something, and the cool thing about creating is it's like I can look at each flower, I can look at each stem, these petals, whatever, and I can go, what's creating this? This is an ancestor. This is someone who came before me. This is my friend who knew I had a really shitty day and was like, I'm gonna bring you some Stella Jean's ice cream because that's my jam. It was like people know that place too. And just looking at how before, feeling that sometimes we can feel alone. I'm just alone, and like I was when I was a kid, right? I don't have representation. I don't know of any queer Asian people, queer trans people who are Asian, and that representation matters. But then learning and uncovering my history, I'm like, I'm filled, and I'm full, and I'm connected, and this is what it feels like. Like I do get emotional because I'm like, thinking of like my younger self, and sometimes feeling like I've got to be white, I've got to be thin, I've got to be these things, and then being able to reclaim that, and as an adult, like lean into, I'm going to embrace who I am, and other people being their true selves. That helped me find my way to learning about who I am, and it gave me permission to ask myself, I've been doing this, but it doesn't, like, it's not fitting. It's something's not right, and I don't want to do this anymore because that's not who I am. And so I think of the agitators, right? The folks that are showing up and protesting and laying in the streets, and the political folks that are getting involved to make change, the educators that are saying, I'm going to continue telling these stories because I know they matter to my students, because I know that they exist. And that if there aren't kids that are out, if there aren't people who are out, maybe it's because they don't feel safe. How do I change that? I think of the people who are the gentle healers, the body movers, right? Like, that's so important, and we all contribute. I am not like I dance, but like whether someone thinks I'm a good dancer is, like, yay. And so I think of how do we show up, and that the things that we're passionate about, like that is my weapon against the folks that are telling me I can't do something or I can't be something. The risk, the fear when I'm like, I can't do that. Like that's like, I might be alone in that. That's going to change my family dynamics. That's going to, like, at what point do you say, I feel the fear, I feel the tension, I feel that moment, and I'm going to come out to you because that matters to me, and I'm going to do it anyway. And so I think something that Adrienne Maree Brown says, she's a queer, Black, mixed race, creator, writer, singer. I heard her song earlier. Thank you for that. And it's very grounding. And an emergent strategy, something I took away from that book was small is all. And I think that is like one of the smallest, it's one of the shortest sentences in the book. And when I think about that, I'm like, wow, everything feels like it has to be on such a massive scale. that if I come out, it's like I've got to set up a presentation and I've got to like set up my own parade to march down the street. And sometimes it's just like telling someone, hey, this is who I am, or not even telling someone. Maybe it's like, I'm going to wear this thing, and if it makes you uncomfortable, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And I think of small as all as those perfume samples, right? Like, thinking about those moments of I can't express myself, I don't have access, I don't know who to talk to, but I can find these like moments to honor myself, to love myself, and that small is all being that we don't have to elevate it to massive scale either. That change, that transformation comes in all different capacities, in all different ways. Sometimes it's like just getting up in the morning and getting out of bed. Sometimes it's showing up to this one and saying, you know, maybe I'll come back next month. Maybe it's, I don't want new friends. No new friends. Like, I'm in it to win it. Like, I've got my things to do. You know, but leaving that opportunity, right? Like, instead of saying no, maybe saying, not right now, but maybe later. And so I think of being creative as life-saving, being creative as transforming, like, and how is being creative doing those things for you today? How has being creative saved your life up into this moment that you could be in this room? And thank you for letting me be here today and to share, you know, randomly just like pockets of memories and you know, soapbox moments. I appreciate that, and to be part of something that has been so important to my life, growing up in a flower shop, sharing it with my family, and being able to tell a story and to challenge us all to keeping those creative opportunities open, not just for yourself, but for others. That's part of our interconnectedness. If this person can't be free to navigate, to explore, to be creative, I can't either, because that's how we're all, I think, connected. So in that, I have a very visual metaphor of that. And I have extra flowers, so if you're like, hey, I want that bouquet, or I want some flowers from it, you know, you want to press flower, whatever you want to do, if this is a reminder to yourself to honor yourself, part of loving yourself is being honest with yourself. Then please, welcome to, also I don't want to take all these home. Thank you for allowing me to come in and talk and to do this in a way that I've never done before, but this was exciting. Yeah, so thank you.